Hi everyone, this is Elena of the Witches Box, and I'm here today with another episode of Witch Booktube. However, today we're not going to be talking about a book, we're going to be talking about reading books, because last week sometime there was a comment down under one of these videos about the amount of reading that the person was having difficulty doing. And it's a question that I actually get just about everywhere very often. I think that the question is second only to I'm a baby witch and what do I need to do next? Like that's like probably the number one question that we get here at the Witches Box. And then the second one is, how do you read as much as you read? I can't do all the reading. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that because sometime maybe it was less than a year ago, I think it was last January, I did a video on the question of, oh my God, how does Elena read so many books, right? I wanted to do a little bit more expansion on that and specifically talk about things that you can do to get more reading in this video. However, I'm going to start this conversation with what you don't want to know or you don't want to hear about, which is this. First of all, if you're like me, and I'm going to assume that on some level you are because you're watching Booktube videos, because a lot of you who asked this question are also subscribers to the Witches Book subscription. I'm going to assume that you love reading. I'm going to assume that on some level you love books. And there for me, I mean, I recognize that I'm probably a little over the top with the whole thing. I love books. I love reading. I am reaching a point in my life, I'm going to go on a tangent and come back, where all my life I've always just assumed, and this was based out of my own scarcity mentality, which is something that we talk about somewhere else, but I'm going to give a little bit about it now. My own scarcity mentality had me believing that I would probably never retire, that I would probably be working till the day I die because, who can afford to retire? That has changed for me now, where I'm actively working towards retirement, and hell yeah, I'm going to fucking retire. And that's the thing. Partly too because I'm about to turn 50 in a year and it's up, right? I'm an artist and I don't ever see myself stopping the creative process. I will be creating something in some form until the day I die. But suddenly, because of my love for books, there is this newfound dream that I just didn't even think was a thing. But now I'm like, no, this is officially what I want to do when I retire. When I retire, all I want to do is spend my days drinking hot beverages, probably coffee, and reading. I just want to spend my days chilling in a garden, on a comfy couch, on a beach, reading. That is how much I love reading and I love books. I love books. I'm a little obsessive. However, even if you are not obsessive like I am, I get that you want to read more because books have that allure. We want to read more. If you're here with me as a witch, then we talk a lot about the idea of continuing to learn as a practice. You do that through books mainly. You also do that through mentorship, but you also do that through direct experience. But that's, again, a whole other topic. But reading is important. Learning is important. And I recognize and appreciate this desire to how do I get more reading in? So we'll talk about that. But I wanted to preface it all by saying, I get you, I feel you, and, however, there are realities to our lives. We have jobs, we have families, we have pets, we have countless responsibilities. There is something to be said about recognizing and embracing that you read what you can, and that sometimes you really can't read a lot. Sometimes you're way too busy. Maybe for you, a month is just enough for a book. Maybe for you, you can really only get in a book a season. I want to impart to you first, before I go into a whole list of all these things that you can do to read more, I want you to get into a place where you're getting that you need to embrace where you are, and that if you are not reading as much as so-and-so, that's okay. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing anything. You read as you can. You read as your life allows. Unfortunately, in our lives today, reading is kind of a luxury side, leisurely thing. And sometimes we don't have a whole lot of time for leisure or luxury, right? So I want to first and foremost make sure that you sit with what I'm trying to tell you, which is you read how you can, you read what you can. We all have different capacities for how much we can read. The other thing I want to say is that there have been comparisons that, oh my God, Elena, you read so much. How I can't do it. I feel like I'm always behind. Don't compare yourself to me. I have a very simple life. It's a life that I've created by design. because I can't handle a whole lot of things going on at once. So yes, I have a partner, I have a husband. Yes, I run my own business, but that's kind of it. Like my immediate responsibility in the world, my immediate day-to-day responsibility in the world is my partner and my business. After that, and that takes up a lot of time, yes, absolutely, but it doesn't. If we had had kids, I wouldn't have anywhere near as much time as I have now. If we had had pets, we had pets for a while. If we had a pet now, I wouldn't have nearly as much time, right? And also, because I own my own business, I've rolled reading into the business because I love it that much. Do you know what I'm saying? So I don't want the amount of books that I read or all the books that I talk about to be somehow this like measuring stick for how much you should be reading. It's not realistic. I have done a lot to simplify what I have to give my attention to in my life. And I very consciously chose reading to be one of the bigger things. So understand that. There's no judgment. There's no measuring stick. There's no merit here. Does that make sense? So if you've got the partner and the kids and the pet and the full-time job and like all the things, you may not be able to do more than a book a month, a book a season, a book a year. Any of that is okay. I want to again repeat that I get the desire for more, and we'll talk about that, but I just don't use this as a way to beat yourself up for yet one other thing that you're not doing. That's not what this is about. So let's let that be what that is, okay? I want to speak really quickly and specifically to those of you who are subscribed to the Witches Book subscription. I send out 2 books a month, right? And there's a forum for that. There's a live gathering with the authors for that each month. There's a lot. I mean, it's kind of a lot. Some people, 2 books in a month, super easy. Some people, it's like, what are you talking about? I only did a chapter this month. I couldn't get any more done. That's okay. That's okay. I don't want you to feel like you're behind. Here's the beauty of the way we set up the Witches Book subscription. The forum is there forever. So if I sent out 2 books this month, but you can't get to those books until 4 months from now, you can still talk about those books in the forum 4 months from now because it'll be there. And if I gave you those books this month, but you can't read them this month, you can still participate in the live where we have the authors come and join us. Because then that gives you even it's more than an amuse-bouche. It's like a straight up, full on, juicy appetizer to the book that you're going to be reading in a few months, because you get to sit with the author before you read the book. You get to hear what their thought process was behind the book. You get to hear about what they're doing next. You get to hear about the work itself. And all you have to do is sit there for the hour, the 2 hours that we're there and listen, right? So you still have experience. It's just that you get to drag it out a little longer and be in it a little longer, which is kind of juicy. So I don't want those of you who are subscribed to the Witches Book subscription to feel like, oh my God, I can't keep up. It's 2 books. It's too much. It's too much. They're with you forever. You'll have those books as long as you have them. The forum will be there as long as you're subscribed, and you get to join in on the live. So you at least have the experience of like meeting the authors before you dive into the books. So please, oh, for the love of God, the love of the mother, release yourself from that pressure, because it's not fun. There's nothing good that's going to come out of that pressure, and there's no need for it. No need for it. Allow yourself off the hook. It's okay. I'm telling you, it's okay. Okay, so there's that. Chill, ease, release, allow yourself to be at the pace that you're at. And here are some tips. So the very first thing I'm going to talk to you about is something that I've kind of been on a little bit of a rant lately, like literally this morning or today, I don't know what time. I did a live on IG where I kind of went on a rant about this for a little bit of a different reason, but it's a thing that I'm on for a hot minute because it's going to keep coming up for 1,000 reasons. I know that I'm giving you a long preamble. Let's talk about social media. I said this in the IG where I'm like, it's kind of hypocritical what I'm about to say because I'm literally talking to you on social media and I'm telling you to get the hell off of social media, right? However, this is what I'm going to say. Social media has a purpose. Social media, like for instance, I love IG. I love photography. I love sharing our hobbies on Instagram. I love the visualization of what our business is and putting it on Instagram. I love that. I'm a visual artist. I love those things. I also really find that the community on Instagram, for the most part, depending on who you follow and who follows you, are incredibly positive, supportive people. There's more often than not, it's incredibly rare that I find anything negative going on, at least in my stream and in my circles. And I have my personal Instagram account and I have my business, the Witches Box account. It's usually incredibly positive, incredibly inspiring. I love the visual work. I love it. Facebook, not so much. Facebook is a constant dumpster fire. I never walk away from Facebook feeling exhilarated, happy, content, fulfilled, uplifted. I don't walk away from Facebook ever feeling that way. It's incredibly rare, unless I've found some lovely little like puppy video. Same thing for Twitter. And I know, because I've done this and everyone I know does this, and there are studies done on this, we use social media oftentimes as a way to kill time and to numb out because we're so tired. We need a way to check out, and it's a great tool to check out, but it's not a checkout that leaves you feeling rejuvenated or nourished or uplifted. I'm going to talk a lot about this in various ways throughout the next year because I'm finally putting together the Protection Magic e-course, and trust and believe that we're going to be talking a shit ton of stuff about the amount of energy drainage that happens on social media for us and our power. Okay? That's not related to book reading, but it's there. I'm saying all of this about social media because I want to drive home one thing and talk about social media, which is this. If you want to read more, I'm going to suggest that you follow your desire. If the desire is to be with books, if the desire is to read more, check in with yourself throughout the day on the things that you're doing that are about numbing out. And would you rather numb out in a way that's going to leave you depleted, or would you rather check out and rest and read something that's going to leave you in some way uplifted, whether that's fiction or nonfiction? Because I'm talking about all books now. If you want to get lost for a minute because life is just a dumpster fire, things are exhausting, everything is super stressful right now, you just don't even want to be where you're at all, read an awesome, exhilarating fiction fantasy novel or a Western or whatever it is that the genre that you love. And you are walking away from the experience nourished and rested because you're reading story, because on some level it speaks to the human experience, because it also gives you a broadening field of creativity and imagination. You can do that, or you can scroll for about an hour and a half on Facebook and walk away pissed off because everyone's crazy. So this is just one of the ways and one of the reasons why you can turn away from Facebook or from social media for a while and read a book. If you look at your phone, right, I think probably all phones, I know that iPhones do this, but I'm sure all phones do this, where they kind of give you a weekly or a daily rundown as to what apps you spent the most time on. I'm going to say that all of you at least spend 3 hours a day on social media. There are statistics about this, so you can look that up. It's a lot of time that you can be reading a book. So if you want to read more, that is a great chunk of time that you can resource for that. Because I'm telling you, you're going to get more life affirmation out of reading a book than you are scrolling mindlessly through social media. If the goal, like me, is to just read, and you want to be able to read more, the other suggestion I have is read more fiction than nonfiction, which is hard. It's also probably incredibly hypocritical of me to say, although maybe it's not hypocritical, it's just fact. You will read fiction faster than you will read nonfiction because the story pulls you along. And your mind, there's a part of your brain that's working when you read nonfiction that is trying to incorporate new information and new context into the old context, right? If you, as an example, you're a witch, you know how to cast a spell, but you're learning a whole new way of like casting a spell. You've got your old spell information going on here. I don't know why I always do this part of my brain. You've got some old information and old habits and culture around how you've cast a spell before and the way you do it now. And now you've got new information. So while you're reading this information, this nonfiction book, your brain is taking it in, but also trying to make it work, right, with this old information. And so there's a lot of processes going on when you read nonfiction to learn something new in that way. So it's slower going. I think statistically, we all read nonfiction slower than we read fiction for that reason and other reasons as well. So if the idea is I just want to read more books, try your hand at just trying to incorporate more fiction. You will get through more books that way because it's fast to read. It pulls you along. They're also harder to put down. I find that even though I 99.9% of the books that I read are nonfiction. And I love it. I love learning. It's why I read. It's just I want to take in more. I find that I still have to put the book down after a while because I need to absorb. I need it to download. I need it to make sense in the rest of my matrix. Whereas with a fiction book, I can't put it down. Like it's on and on. I'm like, oh God, it's like 3 a.m. and I'm still reading this book, but I got to finish it because you just want to get to the end of the story. So definitely, if you want more numbers in terms of books, spend some time in fiction. The other thing is that fiction is a fantasy. Fiction is an escape, and it's a great substitute for the numbness that we look for when we are mindlessly scrolling through social media. So that's another way to do it. Another way that I've incorporated, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So again, flexibility and ease and compassion for yourself is the name of the game. Do as you can. Don't judge when you can't. It's okay. Okay. I talked about this whatever the last video was, and I've talked about it, and I think in a couple of lives as well, that, when you own your business, it would be really common to like be working until 10 o'clock at night, and then I'd be exhausted, and then I'd go to bed, and then I wake up, and then I would do it again. And so last January, because I also had ambitious goals about the books that I wanted to read, and I wanted to read more than just what I was sending out for the Witches Book subscription, because there are other books that I really want to read that have nothing to do with witchcraft. And also because I want to continue to work towards and practice having a healthier lifestyle, I made the commitment and the goal I need to stop work at 5 or 6 o'clock at night and be done. I need to go home. I need to actually look at my husband and connect and have a conversation, right? And I need to eat food and just be in something different. And I'll read. I'll read an hour a night before I go to bed, or an hour or 2 hours a night before I go to bed. And for the most part, that works. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes things get in the way. Sometimes when we had the pandemic breakout in the beginning of whenever it was, 1,000 years ago in March, in California, we had a complete lockdown. Every work, every job, every company had to send everybody home. And for about a month and a half to 2 months, I was here by myself in the workshop working until 2 or 3 in the morning, packaging hundreds of thousands of boxes every month to get them sent out. And it's definitely not a job for just one person. It's a job for several people. So there was no reading. There was no reading. There was no sleeping. There was very little. We didn't do any witch booktube videos, right? So there was a long stretch there where obviously life happened. I didn't read. I mean, you couldn't. You have to do what you have to do. So that's an extreme example, but things happened. Once that was over, it took me a while to get back into the routine of, all right, I go home at 5 or 6 o'clock. Sometimes it's at 7, and I'll read for an hour to 2 hours a night. And sometimes I don't. If you can't do that, that's okay. But I prioritized that based on the desire that I had for more. My life also allows for that. My evenings with John are quiet evenings. And sometimes we'll hang out together while he's watching TV and I'm reading. Or we're both reading. Do you know what I'm saying? So recognize, again, that there's also a lifestyle component involved here. Beyond that, we all, for the most part, I would say, even though I don't really do it as much, but we all have to drive to grocery stores, and we all have to drive to work, and we all have to drive to different places regularly. I have really quickly, a year and a half ago or whenever it was, gotten over my super duper snobbery around audiobooks. I used to think that it was just sacrilegious because books are sacred, the paper is sacred, the font, the typeface, the whole thing is a work of art for me, and I love being in the book. But get over it. It's 2020, and I had to ask myself the question of, what do I really want to do? Do I want to drive listening to news or listening to something else, or do I really want to have in the book that I read, even though it's not reading? So when I drive, I listen to audiobooks, and I get books in that way. However, and this is just a side commentary, I'm not going to name names, but I don't have to. The majority of, there are only really 2 large pagan book publishers out there, which I love because really the majority of the books that we use and send out, the majority of the books that I own, some of those logos you can see in the video. I don't know what it is about these publishing houses, but the majority of their books don't come in audiobook. And I don't really understand it. I think that it's, from a business perspective, ridiculous because the amount of money being left on the table is obscene. And it really creates an accessibility issue because none of the books, I think that's not true. I think that in all the books that we've sent out with our subscription, I think only 2 of them come in audiobook. I don't even understand that at all. So if what you're really wanting is to read more pagan books, you're going to have a harder time with my suggestion that you do an audiobook in your car. So that's what it is. Unless they get with it and they start putting all these books out in audiobook, but whatever. For me, everyone has a little bit of a different reading kind of personality, reading quirkiness, right? I find that for me, audiobooks are best if they're fiction because it's a story, right? And I am more of a visual learner than I am an auditory learner. So if it's a nonfiction book, it needs to be a nonfiction book that doesn't require a whole lot of processing for me. So an example of a nonfiction book, like, I don't know, I have my Goodreads link down below if you're following me on Goodreads. This year, I think I've at this point read 9 of Seth Godin's books. And Seth Godin has nothing to do with witchcraft. Seth Godin is about entrepreneurship and marketing and being an artist in that realm. And he's kind of amazing. He's very amazing. And if you're an entrepreneur and you want to learn about marketing and being kind of on the cutting edge of your thing, I recommend probably all of his books. But the information there, even though I'm still learning from it, it doesn't really require a lot of shift my context or my ideas. Yes, it's new information, but it feels intuitive enough because I'm in it that I don't feel like I need to integrate a lot. What I do get from those books is that a lot of brainstorm happens. So I always have my journal with me, like I always have a book with me. And so once I stop the car or whatever, I write down some quick ideas that I would get from listening to those books. That said, if it were a book on, for instance, one of the books that Llewellyn put out that has an audio book available to it is Matt Auron's Psychic Witch, which I recommend to everybody. I have that in audio and I also have the book. Even though the content of that book is familiar to me and the concepts were familiar to me, it's the kind of book where I need to just take that in chunks and then let that kind of download and then keep going. I did better with that book reading it than I did with listening to it because of the practices involved, because of just, do you know what I'm saying? It's a different type of information. So all of that to say that we all have kind of a little bit of a different auditory personality or makeup. So for me, I do listen to audiobooks when I'm driving, probably 90% of the time. Sometimes I need music, but when I'm listening to audiobooks, they tend to be very fiction heavy or nonfiction heavy in a way that works for me. Not all books work that way for me. So audiobooks is another way to get more reading in. The other thing I'm going to recommend, I'm going to try to find links for you, but I'm going to send you out into the world to do a search for Tim Ferriss, Tim, and last name is Ferriss. Tim Ferriss and the word speed reading. You can look for that here on YouTube. He has a video instructional for free on reading faster. Maybe it's speed reading or fast reading or reading faster. Do some sort of search around that. He has a pretty cool technique. I think that would work if that's something that you're interested in. But if you also do speed reading search here on YouTube, you're going to find quite a few other videos that teach you how to do that. I have been pretty resistant to that, even though I keep thinking that I need to, because anything that feels like I'm being pushed faster than I already am feels a little frenetic to me. But I do know people who speed read and their comprehension is great. They don't feel that way at all. So I may have to get over that for myself. But that's an option. It's an option to read faster so that you can consume more. And then the other thing that I do that I recommend, but again, it's a lifestyle thing and it just depends on what works for you. Because really what I guess I'm trying to suggest is reorganize your life in a way where this is a priority and you can fit it in. That's the only way to do it. You have to do it and you have to show up for it. So you have to reprioritize your time. When I'm not able to do the 1 hour to 2 hours a night, sometimes I do it on Monday and I don't get to it again until Thursday, right? So you do it when you do it. But for sure, one of the things that I need for me and that I have been trying to really very diligently work at on top of stop work at 5 or 6, I should commit to one or the other time, but 5 or 6. The other thing that I'm working on is that Sundays are sacrosanct. In other words, I might not even change out of my pajamas on a Sunday. Like, I might not even shower on a Sunday. That is the truth. Like, if I shower, I get back into a clean, like, set of PJs, and I'm still in PJs. No bra, no combing hair, no makeup. I don't go out. I am home. I will do, like, a mask. I'll read magazines and books. I will do nothing but sloth around doing the things that I love to do, which also probably include eating. So I eat, I read, I do facial masks and spa day, and that's it. I don't want to do a single damn thing on a Sunday because I need to unplug, I need a break, I need to stop working. And I still struggle because Monday's coming. So I try not to, but I will find myself every once in a while slipping into, well, let me do a couple of work things so that I can kind of set the week up. I'm trying really hard not to do that, not to pick up social media, not to pick up any texts, nothing. That is just one of the things that I want to do for myself for self-care. And part of that is including the reading. So maybe that's an option for you. Maybe if every day a little bit of reading doesn't work, maybe one day where you just read for a few hours because it's your day off, something. But the idea is to prioritize some bit of time. The other thing is that setting aside 5, 10, 15 minutes a day, if that's really all you have, to just be in the words and in the reading, that can be more than enough. That can be that you are in this thing that you love, even if it's just 10 to 5 whatever minutes. Maybe it's not about the amount of books that you read. Maybe what it is just being in what you love, which is the act of reading. And in that sense, you set 5, 10, 15 minutes aside to read. Maybe you start waking up a little bit earlier than everybody else. You have a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, maybe you eat breakfast alone. And in that like little quiet moment, just read for a couple minutes. And that is enough to keep you in that love and that desire and in that space until another day when you have longer to do. And instead of focusing on the, oh my God, I only got through like a book this year. Who cares? You read every day. You read a little bit every week. And that's kind of a beautiful thing. So that recommendation is really about shifting the way you look at what you're doing. Is it about the number or is it about the act? And for me, that made a whole world of difference because I just really love to be in the act, right? And for me, in particular, it's a little bit of a weird balance because it's, yes, about being in the act of the reading and being in the act of holding the book and being in the act of learning a new story. But I've also, because of the way my mind works, folded this whole thing into the witch's box. So there is a numbers game for me too. Like the numbers are important, not necessarily because of the accumulated number, but because of like I'm sending out 2 books every month and I need to know what those books are before I actually choose them to send them out to you. So it's just a suggestion. It's not necessarily something that I live because I have a whole different context going on for myself. So what are the takeaways? Listen, read what you can. And if you can't, that's okay. Decide for yourself where your desire really lies. Is it in having like a list of the 80,000 books that you read this year, or is it just being in the act of reading? And find ways to squeeze it in here and there, but if you can't, you can't. It's okay. There are other ways to kind of incorporate it in different ways, right? You're watching this video, you are part of a subscription service. If you are part of our subscription service where you get these books and maybe you can't read them all in that same month, but you get to listen in on an author, which is kind of fun, kind of sexy, kind of exciting. I think it's the sexiest thing ever. So there are different ways to do it. But I also want to say, my teacher said this to me. It sounds a little flip, maybe. It can maybe sound a little dismissive of life's realities, but she said this, and it's true, regardless of how uncomfortable it makes you feel, that when you prioritize something, your life reorganizes around it. It just does. And I think that that is true. I've experienced it, but I think that it's also important to understand what the desire and the ultimate goal for yourself is. If it's the number, then yeah, you can do speed reading. Then yeah, you can do more audiobooks. Then yes, wake up 2 hours earlier before your like 10 family members wake up in the same house and you have to tend to them. There are things you can do. But if the desire if the pleasure is really about just being in the reading, then 5 minutes a day, a page a day, that's your love, that's your experience, and that's okay too. So it's definitely about understand what your desire is and what your love, where that love and juice and pleasure lies in, and then prioritize that. Prioritizing 5 minutes a day is a lot probably easier than the 1 to 2 hours a day and the audiobooks and all the things, but you have options to get creative there. And then, sometimes life goes in phases. Right now you can't read because life is just a lot all the time, but maybe next year there's going to be leisure time and you'll be able to read all sorts of stuff. So go easy on yourself. We have enough things to beat ourselves up over. How much we read or don't read, it certainly isn't one of them. I think books deserve a lot better than that. So let's not treat books like this thing, this burden. If we can, we can. And if we can't, we can't. But when we can't, and then all of a sudden one day, a day opens up where you can, that's also pretty glorious too, right? So I could probably talk about this for hours. I'm sure that this question will come up again. If I ever get other ideas on what to do to read more, I will certainly share them with you. If you all have other tips or tricks, I would love to read about them down below in the comments. And I think that's it. I will see you next week with another book review, and I will send you all love and deep blessings, and take care. Bye.